Welcome to the course Guidelines for Dashboard Design. Now we will start Lesson 3, Visual Arrangements of a Dashboard. Obviously, a dashboard has a series of elements, parts that define it, and that enable us to introduce the data that we are presenting to our audience in an orderly manner. The general parts of a dashboard always has first a header, where it is important to show the institutional image of the owner of the data. For example, in the case of a ministry, it could be the logo of the ministry, and the colors or the image that the institution uses. We can be very creative in this area, since the idea of ink and data does not apply here. Here we can freely use an image that is attractive, that reflects the values and principles or the priorities of the institution, without further limitation than what is aesthetically attractive. After the header, if our function in the dashboard enables it, there may be a section of filters and they can be placed in different ways. But what matters is that they are easily visible and that all the filters are grouped in just one place. We must avoid having a filter in a position, another below, another in the middle. They should all be grouped in a single area, and they could be placed horizontally or vertically. That does not matter as long as the area is clearly defined and visually distinct from the next area, which is the content area of our dashboard. This is where we place the visual elements that make up our dashboard and that will enable us to tell the story. There can also be a final area at the bottom of the screen with a footnote. Generally, in this area we can identify the source of the data, the year of the last update, and the elements that are a reference for the rest of the dashboard. The dashboard not only has, let's say, parts as seen before, but also there is a concept similar to that of real estate. In a sense, a dashboard can be read as one would a magazine, a book, as many things would be read, and we, due to our Western tradition, always tend to read from left to right and from top to bottom. So, visually speaking, whenever we enter a new dashboard, unless there is a predominant visual element, the first thing we are going to see is this quadrant on the upper left corner. It is often advisable to use that space to identify the dashboard we are looking at and the institution it belongs to. And after this first level of importance, there are areas of second level of importance, which are next to that first level and the central part where our view generally tends to move when we go into a new screen. Some of them are considered neutral, which are not as important as these ones, but they do have some level of relevance. As we scroll down the corner, it becomes less important and our user will devote less time and attention to what is in that place. So, if our dashboard wants to specifically make relevant specific data, it is important to place it in these first areas and not in the last ones. Something usually placed here is the exit or back button, which is not shown earlier because we want the user to navigate through our dashboard before considering leaving it. And as we said before, we naturally read a book, a magazine, or even a dashboard from left to right, from top to bottom, due to our Western culture. But we can rearrange the order we want users to read the story we're telling them by means of visual elements. For this purpose, there are a series of options. A first option is to group elements visually. In this example, there are 3 areas duly defined by boxes. And so, when users enter, instead of reading in this order, from left to right, actually they read it in this order. First column, top to bottom. Second column, top to bottom. Third column, top to bottom. The element of this line that we place here in the middle of a section is simply to visually differentiate or separate the elements of the indicators above. This is for users to mentally know that there is something different from what is shown here. Another way to modify a dashboard is by ensuring certain flow. In this specific case, the fact that we mentioned before that reading happens left to right, top to bottom, actually happens in this dashboard. And so, due to natural programming, users will read this area first, the enrollment indicator, in second place that of the promotion, third that of failure, and fourth that of conservation completion. And obviously, during the design, the order of these indicators was chosen based on the cycle of the data itself. That is, first we analyze a topic of coverage, we find the students, then we check their results, if they passed or failed the school year, and whether they finished the school year. It is important that the order reflect the reading flow in the position of these indicators. And I would like to highlight how the sections mentioned before are all reflected on this dashboard. A clearly defined header, a filter area that is visually apart, the body of the dashboard, and finally the footnote. In the lower right-hand corner, visually weaker, we put the return button so that the users get to it only after reading the whole data on the dashboard. And then there is also another way to rearrange elements by forming certain relationships. In this case of context indicators, a relationship between global and more specific indicators was put together. The line in the middle separates those indicators from the ones below, and so readers will start reading the first graph located at the top left-hand area. And then they will read the two indicators that follow until they have finished with that, because this visual line separates that relationship, and they will proceed to read the indicators below. Summing up, it is important to remember from this lesson that the placement of an element will reflect its importance. Putting an element at the beginning of a dashboard is not the same as placing it at the end. The users interpret and understand through that silent message that what they see first is more important, or that it is the beginning of a sequence of data that they will receive. When we want to change the order or the visual sequence, we have three alternatives. First, grouping. Second, managing the flow. Or third, creating relationships.